Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dutchy Gaming and the next installment of our Tornado Shot League Start Guide. So we're now really into the last parts of the build, unless you really want to spend weeks farming like mirrors worth of currency and gear. What we're looking at is we've just bought our Omniscience in the last episode. How do we get a build together that then can farm whatever league content we want? Now, just want to reiterate again, this is not a bosser. It's 100,000,000% not an uber bosser, and I wouldn't even recommend bossing with it, because even when you get your character set up and feeling good, it's really not designed for bossing. It revolves around moving quick, getting buffs off enemies, keeping up onslaught, frenzy charges, stuff like that. It's just not designed for bossing. So any way I build this character is going to be with mapping in mind. Now, we'll be able to do any sort of map strategy you want, other than maybe, 5 Deli Orbs and stuff like that. That will need a bit more investment. But overall, you should be able to do whatever you want with this character. So the first thing you're going to run through is what sort of gear you need, and it's essentially gear with attributes on it. So if you need to, farm for another couple of hours, get some Chaos Orbs together so you can buy some upgrades. In terms of where you left the last episode, you don't need to change your bow, you don't need to change your quiver, or your chest piece, or your boots, and then the rest of the gear is going to be dependent. The jewelry definitely needs replacing, so does the helmet. Your gloves is really going to depend on what they look like at the moment. I'm already well on the way of progressing this character, so my tree is a bit all over the place because I've had to do some respec. So what I thought we would do is open up the path of building for the character in the previous video, and then I'll go through what you need to do in terms of changes to your tree. So if your character's in a similar situation to mine, this is the tree that you're going to have. But you're going to need to make quite a few changes with Omniscience, and I'm going to explain why here. All we need to do to know why is look into the character screen and look at these stats, because it turns all your attributes above what the base is into Omniscience. And people don't realize that Dex gives you accuracy and evasion, Strength gives you life, and Intelligence gives you mana. As soon as you put on Omni, your mana plummets, your accuracy plummets, and your life plummets, and they're things that you have to balance before you carry on. If you just stick any old gear on, you're going to have about 90% chance to hit, probably got 3.2k life, and not enough mana to reserve all your auras. So, this node here, don't ever drop it, Primal Spirit. I would always keep this to have that nice little buffer. If you drop these nodes, you're going to have to start getting mana reservation on gear or anoints and stuff like that. It just gets a little bit annoying. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take these nodes here, which are dexterity and attributes. To do that, I would drop these nodes here because they're pen. They don't do a lot because we get a lot of penetration. But the way we're going to do it is actually this way, because we can actually drop all of these travel nodes too. So we're going to take these dexterity nodes here along with increased attributes. And we're going to take these two crit nodes there, gives us 90. So let's work with a 90 tree for now. So that's the first step you're going to have to do. What you're going to notice though is that your accuracy, unless you've got it on gear, is going to be shot. If you don't have the accuracy, you can drop all of these claw nodes here. Go to Clever Thief here to get the mana leech that we lost here. And then actually go through life and take these nodes here. And then 100 accuracy per green socket on your bow. That's going to fix your accuracy issues. You're then sitting at 91, so you've got a point left. If you're struggling with mana, you can take the grace reservation here. That's what you want to do for your tree. It's really simple. You may not have to do this drop swap here if you have accuracy, but if you don't have accuracy on your gear, then you're going to need to. So with that out of the way, let's go into the gear and go through what you need to do with that. So as I mentioned in the video, you're definitely going to need to replace your helmet, all of your jewelry, and possibly your gloves. If your gloves have got lots of resistances on that we don't need because it's going to overcap us, then re-roll the gloves. Whenever you re-roll items, you're looking for attributes. And the way items work is attributes roll based on what type of item they are. So the way it works is strength is armor, dexterity is evasion, and energy shield is intelligence. If you have a pure dexterity base, it can only roll dexterity naturally, but you can obviously force another mod using essences. That's what I'm doing. I have an evasion pair of gloves. I know dexterity can roll naturally, so I'm going to roll with strength essences until dexterity hits as well. I would obviously like better than what these gloves are, but I was very short on currency, so this is kind of what we've gone for. So for your jewelry, if you have money, you want to get a synthesized base like this one shown here. It will show us 18% once the attribute modifiers are on it, and then you just roll with either dexterity or intelligence essences. Strength is the only mod that can roll naturally on a belt, so you don't want to be using a strength essence. You want to use either dexterity or intelligence until you hit strength. And then you want life and elemental damage with attacks. I don't have the money for one of those, but I did have a very nice fractured heavy belt that cost me next to nothing. I've put the attribute modifiers on it, roll with dexterity essences till I've hit strength. I've already got my life, so then all I need is an open prefix to craft LE damage and attacks, and I've got a really decent Omni belt. For the 2 jewelry items, you're looking for fractured attributes. Now on rings, all attributes can roll, so it doesn't matter what you get as your fractures. I've gone for chaos resistance bases, which are amethyst. If they're too expensive at league start, go for something else. Really, you can use any base whatsoever as long as it's not unset minions and probably the mana ones. You can use any other base at all. Anything's going to help us out with our stats. So you want 2 fractured rings, and then you basically need to decide what sort of ring you want, because to get the perfect ring is very expensive and it's not something I'd recommend at this stage. So you can either roll one of 2. You could do a ring like this that has 2 big attributes, big life and non-channeling skills, or you can go 3 big attributes but then maybe not have any life and just crafted mana cost of skills. So I'll very quickly go into Craft of Exile to show you an example. So if we're going to use a ring, and we're going to say we're crafting with essences, we just need to tick this fractured thing here so that we can set a fracture. So we'll say the ring has got fractured dexterity on it. So you've got 2 options, as I say. You can either look to force something with an essence, which you're going to do anyway. So let's say we're going to force strength with an essence of rage. And I also want intelligence. So we're going to say I want tier 3 intelligence. So it's telling me it's 36 tries to get those 3 suffixes. But if you then wanted to guarantee any form of life in there, it goes up to 356, which is way too expensive. The way you used to craft these rings is you would get your suffixes sorted. If you didn't hit what you wanted, you would keep suffixes, reforge prefixes, and you can't do that anymore. So you have to do the more expensive things of like locking and re-rolling, and it just gets really expensive. So if you wanted 3 attribute rings, don't try and get anything else on it. Just roll until you get an open prefix. And then craft your mana cost is what I would do. And I think the best way to do it is have 1 3 stat ring and 1 2 stat ring with really, really big life. So let's take this off of it and say we don't need to hit intelligence anymore, because we're going to be happy with our fractured dex and the strength that we're putting on from our essence. If we then said we wanted at least 50 life, and there you go, that's 11 tries for that to happen. So essentially it's 11 tries to get life with the essence that we're rolling. And then all we need to do is have an open prefix to craft the mana cost. So even if this took 2 or 3 tries, it's fairly cheap. So that's what I would do for you rings. Do 1 with big, big life. In fact, I'll probably go even higher than 59. I'll maybe go the next one up because it's 16 tries. That's what I would do. So 60 plus life, 2 big stats, and then on your other ring, forget about the life, 3 big stats, and then both rings need minus mana cost crafted onto them to make your mapping feel super, super comfortable. And that's kind of it for the gear that you need to get going. You can stick on your Omniscience, allocate either Utmost Might, which is here, which is very cheap, or you can allocate the Intelligence one. Doesn't really matter what one, they're both super cheap. And then the only other item I'd recommend is a Black Sun Crest. Get as higher attribute rolls as you can for each one. I've gone without an Anoint because Anoints are super expensive, especially the Tornado Shot ones. So at this stage, I'm happy to run without. If you decided this was going to be your end game helmet, you want Tornado Shot Fire as an additional secondary projectile. This league, they're super expensive at the moment. They're about 10 divines. So you'd probably be better off buying a helmet and paying a lab runner to get the enchant for you. And then the only other thing, which I think is pretty obvious, is that all your jewelry items want to have catalysts on them to boost up attributes. I think they're intrinsic catalysts. And that again will boost your omniscience up. And so if we look at my character has 1.8k omniscience, which means because of that, I don't really have to worry about resistances. Like I'm super overcapped on everything. So that's why I say if you've got stuff with resistances on, it could be wasted if you've got a lot of omniscience. So with that out of the way, that's enough to get your character absolutely grinding the content that you want to do. But now is the time where you have to be really careful because each upgrade is going to be expensive. So you need to decide how you want your build to perform.
So what do you want to do now? So now is when you need to target what kind of build you want your character to be. So I'm going to go through what I'm doing and how I'm building it. There's another variant that I've got on trade. I'll link the video, which is quite expensive for the DPS it pumps out, but it's super, super safe. I've got to 96 just doing any corrupted maps I wanted to run other than Reflect. And it's worked really, really well. I never feel like dying on that character. It feels super safe. The way I'm going this time is a bit more DPS because I don't want to spend quite as much money. The reason I'm doing it is because people have asked me to transition all the way through to like the mega expensive Fizz conversion hatred version of the build, which I will try and do if I get time to do it. It's just whether I can farm that amount of currency, but I'll certainly do my best. What am I doing in terms of my character? So I've decided I do still want to be ailment immune and I want to be stun immune, but I actually want to run a Hiri's Ire. One, for the massive extra damage that we get. Increased evasion is obviously really good, dexterity is good, and spell suppression is good. What I've decided to do is actually drop my boots that I created because it's too hard to get ailment immune if we can't put it on our chest because we don't run a shield. Really, the only options we've got are to path down here, and I just think it's too expensive points-wise to get down here. However, what I have noticed is there is this node here which gives you 100% evasion rating from your body armor. So what I've actually done is dropped Grace and swapped it for Purity of Elements. And then to get my stun avoidance in, I've recrafted one of my items, if I can find them. Yeah, I've recrafted these boots because I don't need the ailment avoidance anymore. So the boots become much easier to craft. I'm still using a movement speed fractured base. And I've gone for essences that avoid being stunned. And then that caps me out because I was already at like 75%. So I've still got my stun immune, still got my ailment immune because I'm running Purity of Elements instead of Grace. I just felt that this was probably the best way to do it because otherwise the boots were going to end up costing a ridiculous amount of money because I needed kind of max ailment immunity. We're then still going to need to anoint probably crystal skin. I think it is to get the other 20%. And I really didn't want to do that. So the anointment I still need to look at because I think this is probably not the best one now. But I'm just keeping it for the moment. And that's the way I'm looking to progress. So I've dropped Grace for Purity of Elements. I'm still in Determination. And the build hasn't changed much other than that change. So there are still things I would like to do. But since you guys want me to transition into the Fizz variant, I don't want to spend any more money because I'm going to need a ton to start crafting the items. What I've done is linked Eleshar's channel in the video description as well. He runs a physical to cold tornado shot build this league and has spent hundreds and hundreds of divines on it. And he's got some really, really good crafting videos. So what we're going to do for the rest of this video is I'm going to carry on farming my Alchemy strategy, which I don't think is probably the most profitable, which is why I might need to change it because now I'm at the stage, if you guys want me to push to this mega expensive build, I need to make sure I've got the most efficient farming strategy going. And I need to have a look because we're kind of, even though we're trying to simulate a league start, we're not a league start. So I need to see what makes the most money because I'm going to need to be making 5 to 6 divines an hour to sort of claw in the currency. I'm going to need to make this stuff since I don't play full time. It's not my job. It might be quite difficult to do. So the last thing to look at before we roll into the highlights is just to go through the 6 link because when you're mapping, you want to have as much clear as possible. And because of that, I actually run 2 different 6 links in my chest, depending on whether it's just a boss or it's a map. Obviously, I've said it's not meant for bossing, but when you go in to do Maven or Uberald or whatever it is, you'll need a slightly different setup. So I will just bring the gem out of retirement quickly. So what your 6 link wants to look like when you're mapping, if you've got enough DPS to be able to get away with it, is Awaken Chain instead of LE damage with attacks. So you're going to be running Awaken Chain, Inspiration, GMP, Trinity, and increased damage as your support gems. I need to flip this, I totally forgot. And then obviously Tornado Shot is the main gem. The reason is it just makes the clear absolutely amazing. It does mean your bosses might take a few more seconds to get down, but the difference it makes in clear speed and getting through maps is amazing. And then for bosses, I'm just swapping in any green gem. Now, it can't be added cold because it messes my Trinity up. So you've got 2 options. It's either going to be Mirage Archer or Ice Bite. Ice Bite is a bit dodgy depending on boss situation. So I think I would always go Mirage Archer. It's just better DPS because Chain you actually lose DPS as you can see. So you would just add in Mirage Archer for your bosses. It also means for those annoying bosses where you have to move a lot, at least you've got some sort of DPS uptime. And that's really all I needed to show in terms of the links. Everything else stays the same. You run the guard skill of your choice, which can either be Molten Shell or you could just put a Steel Skin on left click. And as I say, there's the Purity element swap instead of Grace. And I'm finding that absolutely fine.
because my evasion is 7.5 and then 5 armor. But with flasks, it's 12 and 11, which is ample for mapping, to be fair. I am dying in very, very juice maps when I get absolutely smacked around by harvest monsters or a horrible arch nemesis mod. But in general, I'm finding it pretty comfortable. So with that out of the way, let's jump on to some highlights. So let's go through the gear I've got at the moment. So I've still got a 6-link because I don't feel like I need any more single target. So I've recrafted the bow. It's the same method as before. I just got lucky and hit 3 elemental prefixes. You could also probably buy a bow at this stage of the league when you get here. But again, you're just looking for crit chance, attack speed, and LE damage. If you can fluke +1 arrows as well, excellent, but it's not necessarily needed. Bog standard Black Sun Crest. Quiver is fires an additional arrow. The crit and frenzy mod is a very important craft. Those two are basically all this quiver has. The rest of it is not that great. What you would ideally want on here is something like this, but with loads of projectile speed on it also. Obviously got Omniscience. And we've got our 2 rings that have already gone through. Harry's Ire. Some gloves just to give some life and some accuracy. So originally I had to take these nodes here because I didn't have the accuracy. I do now. I've made sure I get it on my gloves. So then I don't have to go here and take these accuracy nodes. Again, this belt could be better. We could get a synth base here, but this one does the job. And then the boots, as I've explained, I've replaced because we no longer need them for ailments. So I've gone for increased onslaught effect because we get onslaught on kill. And then I've got increased armor from equipped helmet and gloves. Doesn't really do very much. I could probably re-roll this or get an armor pair of gloves because then I kind of get the best of both worlds. But at the moment, I'm not too fussed. I'm not dying, so we'll just leave it as it is. There isn't much on Eater of Worlds that we can get that's actually useful. So I just left it at that rather than waste the currency. And then we've still got our armor, evasion, crit, and movement speed flasks. So what do we do from here? I haven't decided yet whether I've got the time or the patience to go for all the farming needed to get a fizz conversion going. However, the version we've got at the moment is really just an entry-level Omniscience version. So the next video, which will definitely be the last one in the series, is going to be min-maxing the build as much as possible. And it's either going to be pushing this Trinity version to much, much higher capabilities, or sticking with this version and using this to farm the tons of currency we need to get a Hatred version going. Whichever version of it we go for, I'm really looking forward to it. Because it's normally at this stage of builds I sort of give up and say, well, it can farm fine, it does the job, why should I spend more money on it? And that's when I tend to roll another character, because I might do 9 to 10 characters a league normally. Whereas this, I want to make sure that if people only run one build and they want to min-max it, that they can do it through my videos. So the next video, which is probably going to take a while for me to get all the bits together, so don't
expect it out tomorrow. It could be as much as a week before the last version comes out. As I say, it's either going to be, which is more likely, a Trinity version, but min-maxing it as much as we can, or pumping all our currency into the Hatred version. So thank you very much for tuning in again. I really appreciate people's feedback and positivity towards this series. I hope it's helping people out. But until next time, take care and see you in the next one.